Welcome back to the Sports Talk ATL Podcast, home of your second place Braves, your last place Falcons, and the offseason Hawks. I am joined by Alex Ord at Go Sports Talk on Twitter. I am Chase Irle at Sports Talk ATL on Twitter. We have a lot to talk about since we were last here early last week. First and foremost, let's give out an RIP to Ozzie Albies, man. This just kills me. The guy comes back after being out for over 3 months. Plays 2 games. You could feel the energy he brought to the clubhouse. I think it was big in the Braves beating the Phillies in those 2 games. And, on a freak accident, breaks his pinky, and he is now declared out for the season. Just terrible, man. I mean, I don't know if there's, in all of the sport, I think there's not very many more likable athletes than Ozzie Albies. Whether he's performing at a high level or whether he's slumping, he just brings so much joy, energy, the way he plays the game. And it's a tough loss. I think the Braves are going to feel it in the postseason. I definitely think what he brought to the clubhouse, whether he performed as well as we've seen in all-star years or not, what he brought to his clubhouse, I think that was very important. So it's super disappointing for that to happen.
Yeah, intangibles are so important, especially in the postseason. He broke his pinky and then finished out that inning scoring a run. So that just shows the kind of player he is. It really does suck. But the Braves are, in a much better situation now to handle the blow of that loss than they were. Vaughn Grissom just steps right back in and keeps doing what he's doing.
Yeah, I mean, thank God you have a guy like Vaughn Grissom who just keeps impressing me because, he's taken some lumps, it seems like. He's had a couple stretches now where, he's gone 2 for 23 or 3 for 30. But then he bounces back, he gets on base, and you look up and he's still hitting over 300. We're over 30 games into his career, and he has an over 800 OPS. So, I mean, if he keeps playing like that, he's not nervous out there. He's enjoying it. He's shown no signs of any rookie, like real rookies. It's insane. I mean, I don't think people realize how blessed the Braves are because this isn't normal. Like, look at the Mets. The Mets had Beatty and Vientos, and they called them both up over the last month. Guys, those guys are performing awfully. I mean, just awfully. They can't perform at all. Meanwhile, you got the Braves. It's like, Spencer Strider, Michael Harris, Vaughn Grissom. They just come up here, and they're superstars, for lack of a better word. I mean, Michael Harris, and Spencer Strider. I mean, those guys, if they played the whole season, they'd be in the MVP race and Cy Young race. So it's just amazing how this has panned out this season for the Braves. And these rookies really leading this team with guys, especially now with guys like Olson and Irle struggling. So now we're 1 game back in the division of the Mets. Like we've said several times over this podcast, since really the second half of the season, it's coming down to those last 3 games. It seems like every game, every day the Mets win, the Braves win. Every day the Mets lose, the Braves lose. It just like it has to come down to that season or that series, right? It has to.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. We'll be there for at least one of the games. I know you're going to go to all of them, but I'll be there for at least one of the games, and that'll be a playoff atmosphere. I am so excited to go to that game. And it's looking like the Braves might have to sweep because the Mets have that tiebreaker if things stay how they are right now. Hopefully the Mets lose one to a team they shouldn't, and we can gain some ground before then so we don't have to sweep. But yeah, we've been saying it for since the All-Star break. We've had this series circled, and it was always going to come down to this series, and it looks like they're going to have their best aces and we'll have our best aces. So it's best on best. And there's nothing more you could want. That's just the best kind of baseball you could have.
Yeah. I mean, in my lifetime, from what I can remember, this is by far the best playoff race. Both teams should cruise over 100 wins, providing they play. Really, they just have to play 500 baseball to get to 100 wins. So, it's going to come down to the wire. We have a critical series against the Phillies. The Mets, they play the Athletics and the Marlins. Much easier than a 4-game set at Citizens Bank. But the one thing I will say about the Mets, and they've been doing this all year, they actually beat up on a lot of the good teams and kind of struggle a lot of times. I mean, we saw them get swept by the Cubs, lose 2 out of 3 to the Nationals, lose a game to the Pirates. So they're very susceptible to losing a game to anybody. I mean, it's baseball. And with that lineup that can't always score at will like the Braves can because they rely so much on 2 or 3 players, they're susceptible to losing a game to a lesser team like to the Marlins or Athletics, who have 2 of the worst offensive baseballs. Let's make no qualms about it. But let's talk about the Braves here and what are the keys to winning this division. And I wrote an article on this earlier, and it's Matt Olson and Austin Irle. Austin Irle, over the last 2 weeks, 14 games, he has a 148 average, with just 2 home runs. Matt Olson, dating back 20 games since before the month, has a 0.96 average and like a 300 OPS. He only has 7 hits and 81 at bats. These are 2 of the best offensive players. Now, Riley, I know he's going to come out of this at some point, but we need him now. He only got 13 games left. Olson, on the other hand, I mean, this is probably one of the most severe slumps we've ever seen him in. He's obviously underachieved, compared to what we all expect from him. That we don't have to argue about that. That's just facts. But what we can agree on is if he succeeds, if he performs up to what we know, what we've seen him do, this team is going to be nearly unstoppable come the postseason. So, hey, listen, I don't care if you have a career low OPS or OBP or average. I really don't give a shit. We're going to make the playoffs. Your legacy is going to be determined on how you perform in October. That's what Olson's legacy is going to be determined by.
Yeah, you mentioned how the Mets are so dependent on a couple of players to bring in runs, and the Braves, 2 of their best offensive players are slumping at the worst time, and we're still producing runs. That just shows how deep the Braves really are. I mean, we're getting so much production from the bottom of the lineup without our 3 and 4 hitters, doing anything at all. They really haven't done anything at all the past month. So that speaks to the depth of the Braves lineup. But yeah, it really doesn't matter. You said it. That article was beautiful. I really thought that was just such a key point that Matt Olson can silence everybody. Everybody won't say a single word, but praise him if he comes in October and just, performs like we know he can. Yeah. So that's all that really matters.
Well, it's like, I mean, think about the legend of Jock Peterson. I mean, Jock Peterson last year really, he had his moments. He was okay for the Braves during the regular season. But if you look at his WAR, I mean, he probably had a .3 WAR with the Braves in those last 50, 60 games. Does anyone care about that? Does anyone know what he did really in the regular season? I mean, except for bring the pearls and look cool as shit and bring some excitement to the clubhouse. I mean, really, we don't even think about it. We think about, that homer against Milwaukee, that homer against the Dodgers off Max Scherzer. We're thinking about that. Those are the moments that get remembered. And he's a legend. He's a folk legend. Was he the best player on the team? Absolutely not. He performed in October. You can say the same thing about Rosario. Now, he was pretty good in the regular season, but the guy, he's having the worst season ever. Does anyone really care? Because what he did last year and what we know he can do in the postseason. So you can shut up a lot of critics because this team has enough talent that they're going to pick each other up. And we're going to make the postseason over the next 5+ years. It's about October. That's where your legacy is going to be determined. That's how the Braves fans are going to remember. But you talked about the lineup: Harris, Grossman, Vaughn Grissom, the Darno, Contreras, all those guys producing the back half. I mean, they've carried this team when really, the front half has been struggling all month. But it's not just been the lineup. It's been the starting pitching. You talk about, I guess I wrote the article, 3 guys in the top 10 in the NL Cy Young race, according to Vegas odds. Now, I don't think anyone will win it, but I mean, Spencer Strider might be the best starting pitcher in baseball right now, outside of maybe DeGrom. Michael Harris said it. I don't think that's a ridiculous take. I don't think it is.
Yeah, when he's on the mound, he's filthy. He's untouchable. And it's crazy that we're talking about him like this because, again, he's a rookie. This is not the norm. And the Braves have 3 rookies who are performing out of this world. It's absolutely unreal. And when you have a guy like Spencer Strider and Max Fried toeing the rubber, games 1, game 2, and yes, it will be Max Fried 1 and Spencer Strider 2. I don't even think that's an argument. You're always going to have a chance. So even if the Braves somehow don't win the NL East, in that wild card, you have to like your chances with those 2 toeing the rubber. I mean, that's just, you always have a chance.
Yeah, well, and then you have Wright and Morton after that. So you get in a 7-game series. I mean, you got 4 horses. Not a lot of people have 4 horses. I mean, you look around the league, even the Mets, I wouldn't say have 4 horses. They've got 3 that you love: Scherzer, DeGrom, Bassett. After that, Taijuan Walker, Carrasco. I don't love either of those guys, especially in a playoff atmosphere. I feel much more comfortable with Wright or Charlie Morton. But Strider, I mean, let's talk about some of the things. One fastest player in MLB history to 200 strikeouts. Now he's on pace. He's only given up 86 hits, and he has over 200 strikeouts. That's never happened before. No pitcher has ever finished the season giving up less than 100 hits and having 200 plus strikeouts. He's a rookie. I mean, it's not a joke anymore. He is one of the best pitchers in baseball. There's no ifs, ands, buts about it. And I think several Cy Young awards are in his future.
Yeah, every time he goes out there, he does something, Chip says something, first time in history, first time in Braves history, first time in MLB history. He's just constantly taking down these records, and it's almost unbelievable. I said it before, I'll say it again. He's a fucking rookie. He's a rookie in doing this. This is unbelievable. And it doesn't look like he's one of those guys who's going to burn out either. He takes care of his body. His mental is always on track. I mean, that's the most important thing for starting pitchers is how you take care of your body to prepare yourself for the next start and keeping yourself in games. It'll be a bigger test in October to see how he handles some adversity. But to me, I don't even question it. I think he'll bounce back no matter what.
I think it's and this is why everyone's like, yeah, it's Fried 1, Strider 2. And I agree. I mean, Fried's earned the right over his career with the Braves to be number 1. But I mean, if you're talking about the most dominant starter, it's Spencer Strider, and it's not particularly close to me. And like you said, I don't expect that rookie thing to come into play like it does with maybe Kyle Wright when he was young. I expect Spencer Strider to rise to the occasion and be much more like a Ian Anderson that can throw 101 miles per hour, like balls out when October and the lights shine the brightest. He just has that kind of aura about him. The expectations for himself are higher for himself than anyone else has for him. I mean, he wants to go out there and strike out 12 and give up 0 hits. I mean, that is what he expects every time he toes the rubber. And I think that's what he's going to think come October. So yes, are we going to pitch Fried game 1? But if Brian Snitker went out there and said, hey, I trust you, rookie. Like, you're going game 1. Let's go dominate these guys. And I wouldn't be mad. I wouldn't. And I love Fried. Fried might be my favorite player on the team. I just think Strider, the dominance, the presence he brings, the energy in a game 1, I couldn't be mad at that at all.
Yeah, I don't think you could go wrong either way. But, I mean, knowing Snit and his decisions in the past, he's going to go with his guy, the guy who's been there before, who's done it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But, again, you couldn't go wrong with either one of them. I think the more interesting to debate would be who gets game 3. Kyle Wright, Charlie Morton, because Kyle Wright's having a career year, 20 wins, all that stuff. He's shown an ability to he gets hit up, but opposed to last year and years past, he sticks in the game and he doesn't blow up. But Charlie Morton is still that vet. He's the vet in the room, and you just kind of, you trust that guy more in these kind of situations. Personally, I would go Charlie Morton just for that experience level. But still, I think the game 3 starter is a little bit more interesting of a debate than the game 1 or game 2.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of, and this is not just from Braves fans. I was actually watching the Blue Jays game, and they were talking about how they're going to line up because they're going to be in a wild card series on the AL side, and they're talking about how they're going to line up their guys, and maybe we should save this guy for game 3, pitch our best guy game 2, and to me, I think you have to go balls to the wall to the finish and play your best baseball. I don't even care if you're clinched. Play your best. Maybe you line up your guys, but you want to be playing your best baseball no matter you're clinched or what going into October. And then I think once you get into October, I don't like the whole messing around and trying to play. We did this with Mike Soroka in 2019 against the Cardinals, and we pitched him in game 3 because he pitches better on the road than he pitches at home, and he went out there and he threw a gem. And we won the game. But guess what? Mike Soroka was unavailable the rest of the series. We get blown out in game 5 instead of pitching Soroka, who was by far our best pitcher in game 1. So I think you go out there and you try to win game 1 and you try to win game 2 because, listen, you win game 1, you take a lot of pressure off yourself. So why are you saving your best pitcher for game 2? I just think that's nonsensical. And you win game 2, the series over. You pitch your best guys. You pitch your best guys. You want to give those guys the most opportunities. I don't like getting too much into the home road split stuff like that. No, you pitch your best guys. Games 1, game 2, and like you said, I do think the game 3 decision is very interesting. I might go with Morton. I've always said this about the postseason: strikeout stuff plays, and one thing Morton can do is strike guys out. He's given up a lot of homers, but if he can limit the long ball, he strikes out so many guys. That's going to play in October. I love the experience too. So I'd probably go Morton too. But again, you can't go wrong either way. It's a great problem to have.
Yeah, very rarely in any sport, in any time, does getting cute and trying to overthink things work out for you. I couldn't agree more with that. I think that is so dumb to do stuff like that. You pitch your best guy game 1, you pitch your second best guy game 2. or the guys you trust the most at least.
Yeah.
And it's that simple. You don't try and get cute and save. Maybe we pitch Max Fried later so that we can have him late. That's dumb. That's not how you win playoff games. That's not how you win world championships. Don't get cute. Put your head down and just fucking do it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I hate getting cute. I think we did that in 2019. I think it cost us, and I don't think we've done it since. The last thing I want to talk about the Braves, I want to revisit my prediction. I did this. We had second half predictions. One of my main predictions was we will clinch at home at Truist Park against the Mets. Right now, it could happen. I mean, listen, the one thing I'll say, and this is going to be a great series, like you said, Truist Park has become one of the best home field advantages in sports. It really has. I mean, I think we're 52-26 this year. So, I mean, we won, 70 or 67% of our games. 70, I don't even know what that is. Is that 75? That's 75? 60, 67?
No, 2/3.
All right, 2/3, whatever. Sorry, math was never my thing. I was a marketing major, But anyways, I think that's when we get it done. I think we get it done. I think we go into that. Listen, we're only one game back but we're even in the loss column. So really, you win. We make up a game today. We win today. We're going to be a half game back. So I think it's easier for the Braves to win 2 games in a row than have to win one and Mets lose. I think that's a big difference. So I don't think that's like quite the one game back that it would be if we were one back in the loss column. So I think that's huge. I think we end up going into that series tied, and maybe we sweep. Maybe we end it.
You gotta like your chances if you go in there even. I mean, I would love that. That play. Either way, it doesn't matter how far we are. As long as we're still in it, that place is going to be electric. We're going to yeah, no doubt. But I can't wait for that fucking series. It is going to be so much fun. It's going to be playoff baseball. I know you went to a bunch of the postseason games last year. I did too. But if no Braves fan did, let me tell you, it's better than any. I went to every single LSU game when they won the Natty. I've been to multiple playoff games in the NFL. It's different. It's different because everybody is holding their breath every single pitch. It's just different.
That's what I've always said about people who tell me, hey, what do you love about baseball? What do you love about it? Listen, you watch a team for 162 days out of the year. They almost become like your family. Like, you know about their lives. You get the backstories of every game. They do backstories of all these players. When these guys are having kids, you learn their personalities. It grows on you. Like, listen, it might not be the most exciting thing from game to game, like a football game, but they almost become part of your family. I mean, I grew up and it's like, what do we do every night? Me and my parents watched the Braves game. It was like, that's it. So they almost become part of your everyday. They do become part of your everyday life. And then you get to the postseason where everything's on the line, whether it's a 3-game, a 5-game, a 7 series, every pitch matters. The runs are hard to come by. The pitchers are coming in and out of the game. Everything is used differently. There's new strategy that you haven't seen all season. And then on top of that, the parks like Truist Park are just absolutely electric. I mean, you hit a bomb. It's just the feeling in the stadium is just one of a kind. I think that's what's so great about baseball, and we're going to get that before the postseason. And like I wrote in an early article, I think all of this stuff, this pressure we're feeling in September, that's going to be huge for October because the team that wins it every year, whether you're out of the wild card round, whether you're win the division, whether you get a first round bye, is the team that's playing the best baseball at the end of the season. It's like clockwork.
To that earlier point about Truist, it's not just the fans inside the park either. There's another, 20, 30, 40,000. I mean, at some of the postseason games, there was 100,000 people outside of the stadium in the Battery and around. They have a little lawn that you can watch the game on the big screen. It's so much more than just inside the stadium, and I think that's what makes Truist so special. I mean, you're going to see each MLB team who builds a new park copy what the Braves did because it works. The Battery is an absolutely stunning place to watch a Braves game. If you can't make it into the game, because tickets will be expensive, that's a second. That's not even a second place. I mean, that's awesome. It's awesome to watch there. So when you hear home runs, it's not just the fans in the stadium, but it's another 100,000 outside.
It's like a college football stadium, and everybody's drunk. And everybody's wasted. I mean, and it's fun, man. And the weather starts to cool down. it becomes a little harder to hit a home run. It's perfect, and we're gonna get that early in September. If you want to have a feeling of just like how big that series with the Mets is, like I could sell the tickets that we have for like $1,000 a piece. That's how ridiculous it is in club level. It's like that place is going to be an absolute madhouse, and I can't wait. I can't wait, and it's coming up. We're 10 days away. We're 10 days away. So take care of business against the Phillies. Got to sweep the Nationals, and then set it up. Yep. Hopefully, I think we're gonna have Fried, Strider, Morton. So it's gonna be fun. But to the guys who don't bring as much excitement, well, I guess on the field they brought some excitement. They lost to the Rams this past week, but they showed a lot of fight. They fell down 28-3, that number, and we kept saying, man, if we can come back from this, maybe that will break the curse. Like all the curses of the blown leads, be gone. And we were close. We had a block punt. We had interceptions. I don't think it was the most crisp played game, but the fight they showed was very encouraging. As much as you don't want to talk about moral victories, it was encouraging.
Yeah, nothing went right for the Falcons, if we're being completely honest. I mean, the blocked punt, and then Cooper Kupp fumbled. Darren Hall had a little Peanut Tillman action, punched the ball out. I mean, nothing went the Falcons' way, and they were still, fighting. That is such a commendable aspect of this team. And just like you said, that is a loser mentality, and I try and distance myself. But, that wasn't a bad loss. The Falcons have had 2 losses in 2 completely different fashions. One was a blown lead, and one was a failed comeback. But one thing remained constant. They were fighting. And Marcus Mariota doesn't throw it to Bryan Edwards in double coverage. Who knows what happens there? I mean, the one constant in this, I will say, is Marcus Mariota fucking up. I mean, he's consistently turned the ball over or put the ball in harm's way. He does do some great things with his legs. This is a different Falcons offense, so I can't appreciate that. He's kept the Falcons in these games to a certain extent. But again, you got to clean up those mistakes. I mean, botched snaps, fumbles in the red zone, interceptions in the red zone. I mean, it's not like the Falcons were driving from their 20 and Marcus Mariota threw an interception. He threw an interception in the Rams' in the end zone. It's backbreaking. I didn't know what to do with my hands. I was walking around, pacing. I was like, is this really going to happen? Are we really going to come back?
Against the defending Super Bowl champions, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it sucks to lose. You don't hate the way you come back. But even when we were down 28-3, I didn't feel like the Falcons were ever completely outmatched. I felt like, they were kind of in the game. They just made a lot of mistakes. I felt like defensively a little bit they were outmatched, but offensively they moved the ball a lot. They just weren't taking advantage. They missed a field goal. They turned the ball over on the Cordell Patterson pick. They obviously turned one over in the end zone to end the game. So I felt like offensively, once again, we're talking about the defending Super Bowl champions here. Last year, that's a game we're losing 41-3. It just felt like we're a competitive team. And like we talked about, on the podcast last week, previewing the game, that was a terrible spot for the Falcons. A team, the defending Super Bowl champions, coming off a national television embarrassment with extra rest, and you're traveling across the country. So that was a terrible spot, and you're competitive.
Yeah, the Falcons have covered in 2 games back to back. That just shows you how competitive this team really is. And I'll take a stat from Myles Garrett, works at Fox, not the Cleveland Browns. Myles Garrett. The Falcons have lost by a combined points of 5 in the first 2 weeks, and last year it was over 40. So again, loser mentality. I hate this, but that's progress. You're just losing by less, and that sucks to say, but we're losing by less. And this week against Seattle, this is a great chance to get back on track. Seattle's reeling. They just got smashed by San Francisco. Probably shouldn't have even beaten the Broncos. I think the Broncos are a dumpster fire. I don't think that win is as impressive as most people thought it was during the time. So Falcons have a great chance of getting back to 500 over these next 2 weeks. But like you said, there was a lot of good to come out of that Rams game. I want to focus on the offensive line for a second. The personnel changes up front are paying dividends. Elijah Wilkinson in for Jalen Mayfield.
No doubt.
and Drew Dahlman in for Matt Hennessy at center. It's a completely different offensive line. And this isn't, a top 10 unit by any means, but it's definitely not dead last. I'd say it's about an average unit, which is great. That's a huge improvement from last year. And Wilkinson did a great job against Aaron Donald, the best defensive tackle in the game, but maybe the best defender in the game. So that's great news going forward. The run game looks like it's there. Cordero Patterson looks like he's somehow younger and running harder than he did last year, if you could believe that. Maybe the offseason personal stuff was worth it because he looks fresh. He's running hard. Drake London looks like the real deal. I mean, he's not, going to play Robin to Kyle Pitts. It looks like he could be his own Batman. I mean, he's wide receiver one. He looks great. Obviously, we need to get Kyle Pitts involved more.
Let's stay on that Drake London thing. Let's stay on that for a second. I want to ask you, now that we've seen him play 2 games, he's obviously not your typical rookie wide receiver. He looks like he could be one of these wide receivers that's in the, Jay Jettas, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. Like he could be that kind of impact receiver early in the league. What do you think now from a stats perspective, assuming Mariota is the quarterback for the rest of the year? Where do you see him? How many yards? How many yards do you think he could get?
Well, we did this prior to week 1, and I said around, just under 1,000, around 900, 800. And I think it's like almost guarantee he eclipses 1,000 now. I really think he just did something that nobody's done, including those 2 superstars you just named, JJ and Jamar, that nobody's done since Stephon Diggs did back in 2015, which was at least 75 yards receiving or 70 yards receiving and 6 or 5 receptions, which doesn't seem like a lot. And you're like, well, surely Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase did that. No, neither of them did that. Yeah. So, that speaks to what Drake London is doing. I mean, he has come as advertised and some more probably.
Yes, I mean, that's what I wanted to say. Even everyone says he's come as advertised. I think, honestly, he's come better than advertised because I think there was a lot of people that thought, oh, he's going to be a jump ball guy and yak guy, he's a big target. It's like, dude, he's creating separation. He is the yak guy. He is the jump ball guy. It's like, there's like a lot more to this. Like he's a good route runner. He may not be the fastest receiver, but he's creating space on a lot of these routes. When you go back and look at it, that not a lot of people were giving him credit for. A lot of people said, oh, that's Pac-12 defense. Like he can't do that in the NFL. So far he's proving that he can.
Yeah, I think Falcons fans, we have no problem drafting superstar pass catchers. That's for sure. I don't know how we continue to do it, but it looks like Drake London's another one. I've been nothing but impressed with him. I think everybody is. Nobody's going to knock this guy. He's been incredible. The only thing I would say is, get him the ball more. Get it to him more. Keep force feeding him. But to kind of transition away from that and go to a more of a negative side is Kyle Pitts' production is it's got to be a focus going forward.
Criminal. It's criminal.
We've got to get, and this was a huge talking point this week for Falcons Twitter. Blaming Arthur Smith. Arthur Smith says the fantasy football comments. This isn't fantasy football. Whatever. And to that he has a point. The NFL is not. They don't give a fuck about points or your fantasy team or my fantasy team. I have Kyle Pitts. It's just they just want to win games. And if the game plan calls for Kyle Pitts to be more of a decoy, to block a little bit more, then so be it. My problem is with Marcus Mariota more so than Arthur Smith. From what I saw, and I rewatched the game, and I still think that this is true. I don't think it's Arthur Smith doing more so than Marcus Mariota. Arthur Smith isn't out there making the progressions or the reads or the decisions. It's Marcus Mariota. And at a certain point, you just got to throw it up to your 6'6" freak and let him go make a play. I mean, at a certain point, you just got to trust that he's bigger, faster, and stronger and better than the guy he's lining up opposing. So I think it's more of a Marcus Mariota thing than an Arthur Smith thing. But yeah, Arthur Smith could probably dial up some more plays.
I read a stat, and this is from, I think, Mike Rothstein, who got this from, I don't know if it was his own, looking at the film or if it was from, the coaches. But I read a stat that he was the primary target on over 50% of the Falcons' plays. He just wasn't being targeted from, he was the primary option. The play was meant to go to Kyle Pitts, but you have a quarterback there that, Kyle Pitts is probably getting the tightest coverage, and I don't think he has a ton of confidence in his arm and throwing into tight windows and stuff like that. We've seen him be skittish in the pocket. So I think I'm agreeing with you. I think Mariota, it's clear he's not the long-term answer here. And I think, that's a bigger reason of why Kyle Pitts isn't getting the kind of target share that we expected coming into the season.
Yeah, I think it could be a little bit more Arthur Smith. I just think that he's supposed to be this offensive genius. And you look at some Rams, some Packers, some 49ers schemes, and guys are just running wide open.
Cooper Kupp.
Cooper Kupp is just running wide open.
Everyone knows this guy is getting the ball, and no one can stop it.
The Triple Crown winner from a year ago is still running wide open.
Still.
Yeah, so I do think it's a little bit on Arthur Smith and that. There's
definitely blame to go to Arthur Smith. I'm not blaming it all one way or the other. I just think Mariota should get a lot of the blame as well.
Yeah, he definitely deserves most of the blame. And to that point, he has been downright horrible when it comes to going through his progressions and his reads. He's not going through fast enough. And then when he does get to something that he does think is open, his anticipation is just gone. I guess he never really had it. This is why he's been a backup. But that needs to be better, way better. And he's just so reliant on, and this is just who he is. And I know I'm just preaching to the choir, but he's just so reliant on his legs that's what his scapegoat is. He feels an ounce of pressure in the pocket and he scrambles. He just goes. And I think that's a real problem. And that was something that we may have taken for granted for Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan stuck in that. And it probably wasn't his choice. He couldn't get out of the pocket. But he stuck in that pocket to the very last second and would make some incredible throws getting hit. And that's something going forward that Marcus Mariota has to be better at. It really does.
I wanted to say one thing about Arthur Smith's play calling when it comes to Kyle Pitts. I saw a tweet. It's funny that Arthur Smith was able to figure out how to use Cordell Patterson, pulling King Arthur's sword out of thing like no one else, but he can't figure out how to use a 6'6" tight end with 4.4 speed. And I'm like, yeah, the guy clearly, and we've seen, I think we both liked Arthur Smith's game plan for the most part in both games. We've definitely seen some creative calls. It's worked with what he's working with. But yeah, he's just got to come up with ways to get Kyle Pitts the ball, whether it's getting it, short completions, whatever it is, getting him more involved. Because right now, 2 catches for 19 yards in both games. I guess he's consistent. But it just hasn't been great. Let's go to the defensive side of the balls. A couple things that we liked and didn't like. I really think Michael Walker is coming into his own as, that Mike backer. He's got the green dot. He had another interception on a great play. Almost took it to the house. I really like what I've seen from him. On the bad side, the pass rush. all that good stuff we loved against the Saints. Whew, it was non-existent against a line. And hey, maybe the Rams offensive line looked themselves in the mirror and said, hey, we gave up 6-7 sacks against the Bills. Maybe they looked themselves in the mirror and manned up against a team like the Falcons who don't have a great pass rush by any means. But it was non-existent. Matt Stafford, it's shocking that he threw 3 picks because he had no pressure, and that's just Matt Stafford football. He's just going to chuck it in there at the tightest space possible.
Yeah, and a couple of the plays that they did have pressure and have a potential sack, Matt Stafford just had an unbelievable throw. But yeah, and I think it's more than just the Rams offensive line stepping up. I think it's the actual game plan. The Rams were running at will, so the Falcons were consistently on their heels. Play action, that's the name of the game with McVay's offense and the Falcons offense. And that's what you saw in the first half. The Falcons couldn't establish the run, so they couldn't establish the play action pass. While the Rams, on the other hand, were doing anything they wanted, run, pass, anything. I think a lot of people confused the Falcons pass rush a week ago or in week 1 and compared the Bills pass rush in week 1. Guys, they got Von Miller, one of the best pass rushers of all time. Ed Oliver is just a young Grady Jarrett. He really is. They're stout up front. And they can get home with 4. And unfortunately, the Falcons are going to have to get creative. They give those mug looks where the linebackers walk up, and you got a couple of safeties that come down into the box. And then at that point, you don't know who's coming. So you kind of have to get tricky. The Falcons, unlike week 1, where they did get home a couple of times with just 4 down, I don't know how, honestly. But going forward, it's not going to be like that. DMCs are going to have to get creative. But to that point, I think that Taquan Graham, who's a 2021 fifth-round pick out of Texas, is going to be a great player in this league. He's learning next to Grady Jarrett, and who else better to learn next to? I mean, Grady Jarrett's going to share everything he can with Taquan Graham. He's quick off the line. He's fast with his hands. He's creative with his pass rush arsenal. It looks like he has a plan going forward. He doesn't just go up there and just kind of do whatever he's going to do. He looks at what the offense is giving him, and then he takes it. And that's huge. First, for a young guy. Second, for an interior defensive lineman. So that's a really big bright spot right there. Lorenzo Carter's been, somewhat disappointing because of the production-wise. But from what I've seen, he's been more than productive in terms of setting the edge. He's doing all those things right. Adio Dendeji has been a little bit of a disappointment. I thought he was going to be a lot better, and it's a long season, so I'm not going to make any sweeping judgments there. And then I'm going to go to 2 more players that have really, on both sides of the spectrum. Richie Grant has been everything. We talked about Drake London coming as advertised and more. Richie Grant is literally coming as advertised. He came in from UCF, and everybody thought that he could play, single high, split high, in the box, in the slot. He's playing everywhere, and he's doing a good job. He's leading the team in tackles. He's got a couple of pass breakups, and he looks like a future foundational piece of this team. On the other side, AJ Terrell. We got to talk about AJ Terrell. This is not what we expected. Nobody expected. He's given up 3 touchdowns in 2 weeks, which matches his 2021 season total. You kind of tip your cap to the Michael Thomas catches. Those were just impressive catches. But the Allen Robinson one this past week, he just got burnt off the line and couldn't even contest it. So that's not great, but it's not something I'm worried about personally. Corners are just dealt a bad hand in this league.
You saw Jalen Ramsey give up a perfect passer rating in week 1 and then have a great week 2. I fully expect AJ Terrell shown us. I mean, even as a rookie, he was a good player. And then he was obviously an All-Pro in his second year. Maybe he's not an All-Pro this year, but I think he at the end of the year, we're going to look back and be like, yeah, this guy's still a really good player. He's still a leader of the defense. I think really the main positive takeaway you can take from the defensive side of the ball is just how the guys that this regime has drafted over the last 2 years have started to really make their impact. I think that's impressive. So that's my one positive from the defense. Now let's get into the preview. Let's start previewing Seahawks. They go up into Seattle, one of the toughest places to play. They face Geno Smith. They are 2.5-point underdogs now. I think it was 1.5 the other day, but I think it's moved to 2.5. Listen, I want to say so bad, like this is where the Falcons get off the schneid. They're going to win this game. They're a better team than the Seahawks. I think they are. Vegas is saying, hey, you are a better team than the Seahawks. The problem with me saying that is I just think this is, again, just such a miserable spot for the Falcons. You go across the country. You play, they stay out west, but still you're away from home for 2 weeks. And then you go play Seattle, one of the toughest places to play, who's coming off an embarrassing loss to the 49ers. So it's just, I want to be like, yeah, Falcons are easily going to win this game because I think they're a much better team than the Seahawks. But again, sometimes it doesn't matter if you're the better team in the NFL because everyone's so razor thin. And it's just when you're playing a team, how you're playing a team, the travel, all that stuff matters.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think it's underappreciated in the NFL world. It's not always about who you're playing. Just like you said, it's about when you are playing. The Falcons they're coming off 2 very emotional losses. And instead of, going back home, sleeping in their own bed, seeing their families, no, they stay out west. They go up, a few hundred miles north to Seattle, practicing at the Washington facility. So this is just going to be another test because everything is working against the Falcons in this one. But like you said, on paper, I think the Falcons are better. And honestly, this is just the worst thing ever. It's going to come down to Geno Smith and Marcus Mariota. I mean, we're having a mid-off. I mean, they are just two of the most below-average quarterbacks in the league of all time. And that's what it's going to come down to is whoever just doesn't mess up. Whichever quarterback fucks up less, they're going to win the game.
I mean, yeah. To say. It just sucks because I really think the Falcons should blow this team out the water, and everything tells me. But Vegas is telling me right now the Seahawks are the play because I think anyone that pays close attention to the NFL has seen that the Falcons, they got some fight them. They played 2 close games. They should be 1-1. Not that it should be matters, especially when you're gambling, but they covered twice. And so I'll get to your prediction. You can tell me why. But I'm going against the Falcons. I'm going to say the Falcons lose this game 24-21. I think our defense still has some holes. I think Geno Smith takes advantage of those holes. I think I watched Geno Smith. I think it was the year Julio Jones broke his foot, had that Liz Frank injury. It might actually happen in this game. And this is the most Falcon thing ever. We're up like 2 touchdowns against the Jets. This is when he's starting for the Jets. And this guy comes back and wins the game. So I don't care what mid quarterback we're playing. We are susceptible to giving up a lead. Vegas is telling me the Seahawks are the play, so I am going to go with Vegas. This is not a game I will bet on. I loved playing him against the Rams. I loved playing him against the Saints. I thought they were hungry dogs in those situations. Don't love them in this game. I hope we win. I think we are the more talented team. I just think you look at the spot, it's just a terrible spot for the Falcons. The schedule has done them no favors to start the season. Yeah, it's been rough. And those are all valid points. But I'm going the Falcons. I really do. Just like you said, Vegas is telling you that the Falcons are a better team. And they are. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I really don't. Right. There's constant preaching coming out of coming out of the Falcons organization. We're not going to give up. We're fighting. Michael Walker had that quote, and I appreciate it, but we need results. That's how you shut everybody up. And I think it comes down this week. I think the Falcons get their first win. I think it's a close one. I think Marcus Mariota cleans everything up. I don't think he has some crazy game. He passes for 180 yards, runs for another 60. Kyle Pitts has a 80-yard game. And the Falcons win by touchdown. I give them, what's the over-under, 52, 51, something like that? 42. 42? Yeah. I think I wouldn't be surprised if it was like 21-13, something like that. So, I hope you're right, and I think they're the better team, without a doubt. It's just like you're screaming at the spot right here, and I just think, the Seahawks fans are still engaged, but if you want to keep this city engaged in your football team, this is just a must-win. This is a must-win. Because I think you've given Falcons fans hope. Even in losses, you've shown enough confidence to where, if we go out there and take care of business against a lesser team, which we all think we're better than the Seahawks, if we go out and take care of business on the road against a lesser team, and you get to come back home and face a Deshaun Watson-less Browns, you start to think you could go 2-2, and then I think you stay at home to play the Niners, I believe. Yeah, the Niners are a much better team than the Falcons. There's no doubt about that. But it's Bucks then Niners, but yeah. All right. Yeah. Well, but still, you give yourself some hope. You go into a Bucks game 2-2, if you go in there 1-3 or 0-4, you might as well just wave up the white flag. You're going to go in there and get smoked. But you go in there 2-2 for the first chance to get over 500 since I think 2017. We have the longest streak of not being over 500, I believe, in the league. Since 2017, I think was the last time we were 500 when we were in the playoffs. So you give yourself some hope. You got 2 winnable games here, and you got to beat the Seahawks. If you want to keep this city engaged, because I believe, I'm starting to become a believer in the organization. I know we've made some shitty coaching mistakes, and I know we've come close and haven't won. but I'm starting to see the future with this team. There are cornerstones, there are pieces. Go beat the lesser teams now. Go beat the Seahawks. Go beat the Browns.
Yeah, I went to that Saints season opener, and that place was rocking. It was so much fun, and that, it was probably due to being week one and the Saints. So that, outside of that, if you lose to Seattle and then come home to face the Browns, that place is going to be a ghost town.
You won't have 50 fans.
That place is going to be a ghost town.
But on the flip side, you go out there and take care of business. I think you're going to have another good atmosphere because you've shown enough over the next 3 games that you're a legitimate football team. Now, you may not be a playoff team, but you're a legitimate football team. You're not getting blown out just because you're playing a playoff team. You're competing. You take care of business against a lesser team on the road, which is hard to do in the NFL. I don't care who the fuck it is. They've already beaten the Broncos at home. So I just think this is this is obviously the Falcons season. You go 0-3 in the NFL, you're 0-2, you're already screwed. 0-3, you might kiss the season goodbye, start playing all rookies. You might as well put Desmond Ridder in the game. There's no point in really playing, which if you go 0-3 against the Seahawks, you're going to start hearing those Desmond Ridder calls really loud.
Especially if Marcus Mariota keeps, throwing games away like he has. And it's on everybody. Marcus Mariota, if you had to blame it on one person, has thrown away both of these games. Both losses.
Yeah, so you're really, the calls aren't really that loud. You've kind of heard the murmurs after week 2. There were the murmurs. Those are going to turn into yells if you lose to Seattle and he doesn't play well. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
No doubt.
All right, guys, that wraps up this episode of the Sports Talk ATL podcast. We will be back next week. Hopefully by that time the Braves are in first place and the Falcons have their first one. Thank you guys for listening.